I was never meant to survive the desert. The sand stretched endlessly in every direction, swallowing the horizon in waves of amber and rust, and I was 3 days without water when the sky turned black. Not the black of night, but something deeper, something alive. Wings blotted out the sun, enormous and leathery, beating the air into submission with sounds like thunder wrapped in silk. I thought I was hallucinating, that dehydration had finally cracked my mind open. But then the heat became real fire. Torrents of flame cascading from above, turning sand to glass in brilliant, terrible bloom. I threw myself behind a dune, covering my head, tasting ash and terror. When the fire stopped, I looked up to see them descending. Dozens of them, maybe more. Women, but not women. Dragon women. Their bodies were human in shape, but covered in scales that caught the light like fractured gemstone, deep crimson and volcanic gold, obsidian black and serpent green, wings folded against their backs, massive and powerful, membranes translucent enough to see veins of molten color pulsing through them. Their eyes glowed with inner fire, pupils slitted like reptiles, mouths full of teeth too sharp to be human. They wore armor made of bone and dragon scale, form-fitting and savage, revealing as much as it concealed, and they moved with predatory grace that made my blood freeze. I tried to run, stupid, pointless. One of them was on me before I managed 3 steps, talons wrapping around my shoulders, lifting me into the air as easily as a hawk takes a mouse. I screamed, kicked, felt the world drop away beneath me as we rose into that black sky. The wind tore at me, cold and violent, and below the desert became a tapestry of gold and shadow. Other dragon women flew in formation around us, a hunting party returning with prey, and I realized with horror that I was that prey. They carried me for hours, over mountains that jutted like broken teeth from the earth, over forests so dense and dark they seemed to breathe, over rivers that glowed with strange phosphorescence. The sun set and rose again, or perhaps it was a different sun, because the light here was wrong, tinted red like blood through water. My captor never spoke, never acknowledged my existence beyond the grip of her talons, and I dangled there, helpless, watching an alien world unfold below. Finally, we descended toward a city carved into the side of an active volcano. I could see the glow of magma through cracks in the stone, feel the heat radiating upward even from a distance. The architecture was brutal and beautiful, all sharp angles and flowing curves, towers that spiraled impossibly high, bridges of obsidian connecting platforms suspended over rivers of lava. Everywhere I looked, dragon women moved through the air, landing and taking off, their scales reflecting firelight in cascades of color. We landed on a broad platform near the volcano's peak, and my captor released me. I collapsed, legs too weak to hold me, gasping in air that tasted of sulfur and smoke. Around me, the hunting party landed one by one, folding their wings, speaking in a language that sounded like crackling flames and distant thunder. They looked at me the way humans look at livestock, appraising, calculating. One of them, scales deep green with edges of gold, reached down and grabbed my chin, forcing my head up, turning it side to side. She said something that made the others laugh, a sound like breaking glass. Then she released me, and they dragged me to my feet, pulling me forward through corridors of volcanic stone. The city was vast beyond comprehension, chambers opening into chambers, halls lined with tapestries woven from metallic thread, depicting dragon women in various scenes of conquest and ritual. I saw images of humans kneeling, of cities burning, of massive dragons larger than mountains breathing destruction across landscapes. Everywhere the heat pressed down like a physical weight, and sweat poured from my body, soaking my clothes. We descended deeper into the structure, passing other dragon women who stopped to stare at me, some with curiosity, others with hunger that made my skin crawl. I saw human servants too, pale and thin, moving quickly with heads down, never making eye contact with their masters. Some bore brands on their arms, symbols that glowed faintly in the dimness. One man, older than me, looked up as I passed, and I saw in his eyes something worse than fear, something like acceptance. They brought me to a massive chamber carved from black stone, circular and ringed with pillars that held up a domed ceiling painted with constellations I didn't recognize. At the center of the chamber was a pool of liquid fire. Not lava, something else. Something that moved with liquid smoothness and gave off light without heat at this distance. Around the pool stood dozens of dragon women, arranged in concentric circle, their attention focused on a raised platform at the far end. On that platform sat a throne of dragon bone and volcanic glass, and on that throne sat her, the princess. I knew she was royalty before anyone told me, before I understood a word of their language, because power radiated from her like heat from the sun. She was smaller than the others, more slender, but there was nothing weak about her. Her scales were pure white, opalescent, shifting through subtle rainbows as she moved, and her wings, folded behind her, were shot through with veins of gold that pulsed with her heartbeat. Her hair was long and silver, flowing past her shoulders in waves that seemed to move of their own accord, and her eyes, when they met mine, were the color of molten platinum, bright enough to hurt. She wore minimal armor, just enough to suggest both modesty and its complete absence. Pieces of white scale that covered strategic areas, while leaving expanses of iridescent skin exposed. On her head rested a crown of twisted horn and crystal, and around her neck hung a pendant shaped like a dragon, eating its own tail. She stood as we entered, and the entire chamber fell silent. My captors forced me to my knees on the cold stone, and I knelt there, heart hammering, as the princess descended from her throne and approached. Each step she took echoed through the chamber. She walked around me slowly, examining me from every angle, and I felt her gaze like a physical touch, invasive and assessing. When she finally spoke, her voice was melodic and sharp, each word precise despite the alien nature of the language. The green-scaled dragon woman who had grabbed my chin earlier responded, gesturing to me, clearly explaining how and where I was found. The princess listened, then reached down and grabbed my face as the other had done, but her touch was different, gentler somehow, though her talons pressed against my skin hard enough to draw blood. She spoke again, and this time I caught a word I would later learn meant worthy, or perhaps sufficient. She released me and turned to address the assembled dragon women. Her speech was long and formal, and though I understood nothing of the words, I understood the tone. This was a ceremony, a ritual, something of great importance. The other dragon women listened with rapt attention, and when the princess finished, they responded in unison, a word that shook the chamber with its power. The princess turned back to me, and for the first time, she smiled. It was a terrible smile, beautiful and predatory, full of promise and threat in equal measure. She spoke directly to me, knowing I couldn't understand, and then she gestured to the guards. They hauled me to my feet and dragged me from the chamber, down more corridors, deeper into the volcanic complex, until we reached a cell carved from red stone. They threw me inside, and the door, a massive slab of metal etched with symbols, slammed shut behind me. I was alone. The cell was small, but not uncomfortable. There was a pallet with blanket, a basin of water, even food on a plate, though I couldn't identify what kind of meat it was. I didn't touch it at first, but thirst eventually drove me to the water, and after a day, hunger drove me to the food. It tasted like snake and pepper, and something sweet that made my tongue tingle. Days passed. I lost count. Guards brought food and water regularly, but no one spoke to me. The heat was constant, oppressive, and I existed in a state of perpetual sweat and discomfort. I had nothing to do but think, to replay the capture and the ceremony, to wonder what the princess had meant, what fate awaited me. I thought about escape, but even if I could somehow get past the guards, past the dragon women who filled this place, where would I go? I was in another world, or another part of my world so far removed from anything I knew that it might as well be alien. Then, on what I thought was the 7th day, the door opened and she entered. The princess, alone. I scrambled to my feet, pressing my back against the far wall, but she paid no attention to my fear. She walked to the center of the cell and stood there, studying me with those molten eyes. When she spoke, it was in my language, accented but clear. "You understand me now, human?" I stared at her, shocked. "You speak English?" "I speak many tongues," she said, her voice carrying that same melodic sharpness I remembered from the ceremony. "It is a gift of my bloodline. I have spent these days learning yours, listening to your sleep talk, your muttering. Your language is crude but functional." "Where am I?" I asked, my voice hoarse from disuse. "Why am I here?" "You are in Ashkarthal, the throne city of the Fire Caste," she said, circling me slowly again, that same assessing gaze. "You are here because my hunters found you and because I claimed you, as is my right." "Claimed me for what?" She smiled again, that terrible, beautiful smile. "I am Princess Kalith of the Fire Caste, daughter of Queen Vermakar, heir to the burning throne. In 10 days I undergo the trial of fire, the ritual that will prove my worth to rule or see me cast down into the lava pits. Every royal daughter must face this trial, and every royal daughter must choose a sacrifice to fuel the ritual. You, human, are my sacrifice." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Sacrifice? You're going to kill me?" "Perhaps," she said, stopping in front of me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from her scales. "The trial is complex. It requires blood, pain, surrender. It requires the sacrifice to willingly give their life force to fuel the transformation. Most die. Some survive, though they are never the same. The choice, ultimately, will be yours." "That's not a choice," I said, anger rising through the fear. "That's murder." "It is tradition," Kalith said, unmoved. "It has been done this way for 10,000 years. Your life is forfeit either way, human. You will die here in this cell, eventually, of age, or illness, or despair. Or you can die with purpose, fueling a ritual of power beyond your comprehension. There is honor in that. More honor than your kind usually receive." "I didn't ask for this," I said. "I didn't ask to be taken." "No one asks to be born either," she replied. "Yet here we are." She turned and walked toward the door, then paused. "I will return tomorrow to begin your preparation. You will learn our ways, our language, our customs. You will understand what the trial of fire truly means. And when the day comes, you will make your choice. And if I refuse?" She looked back at me over her shoulder, wings rustling slightly. "Then you die badly instead of well. The choice is yours, human. It has always been yours." She left, and the door sealed behind her with a sound of finality. I sank to the floor, head in my hands, trying to process what she'd told me. 10 days. 10 days to live unless I gave myself willingly to some ritual that would probably kill me anyway. It was insane. All of it was insane, but it was real. The heat, the stone, the memory of those wings carrying me across an impossible sky, all of it was real. The next day, Kalith returned as promised, and this time she brought others. Dragon women I would come to know as priestesses of the Fire Caste, scholars and ritual masters who served the royal family. They brought books, scrolls, strange instruments I couldn't identify, and they began my education. I learned that this world, Drakeshaval as they called it, was not my world, but adjacent to it, connected by thin places where reality wore through. I learned that the dragon women were not simply monsters, but a civilization thousands of years old, with castes and clans, politics and art, religion and philosophy. The Fire Caste to which Kalith belonged was the ruling caste, born from the blood of the first dragon, keepers of the sacred flames that burned at the heart of every volcano. Below them were the Earth Caste, miners and crafters. Then the Storm Caste, warriors and scouts, and finally the Shadow Caste, spies and assassins who moved unseen through darkness. Humans existed here too, but as servants, slaves, occasionally as honored consorts if they proved valuable enough. Most were taken as Kalith's hunters had taken me, snatched from my world during raids, or caught wandering too close to the thin places. Some were born here, descendants of the original captives, and they lived their entire lives knowing nothing but servitude. I learned the language faster than I thought possible, driven by a desperate need to understand, to find some angle, some way out. Kalith herself taught me much of it, spending hours in my cell speaking in her tongue until the sounds began to make sense, until words emerged from the stream of harsh syllables. She was a patient teacher, correcting my pronunciation without mockery, explaining nuances of meaning. During those sessions, I studied her as much as the language, looking for weaknesses, for something human I could appeal to. But Kalith was not human, not in any way that mattered. She was alien in thought and deed, operating from a framework so different from mine that common ground seemed impossible. She spoke of honor and duty, of tradition and power, and when I tried to argue for mercy or basic human rights, she looked at me with genuine confusion. "Your kind have no rights here," she said once, matter-of-factly. "You are prey. You exist because we allow it. That is not cruelty. It is simply the way of things." "It doesn't have to be," I argued. "You have intelligence, civilization. You could choose differently." "We choose power," she said. "We choose survival. Your kind would do the same in our position. They have done the same throughout your history." I couldn't argue with that, not really, and my silence seemed to amuse her. Despite the grim reality of my situation, I found myself drawn to her in ways that terrified me. There was an undeniable magnetism to Kalith, a presence that filled any space she occupied. She was beautiful in an otherworldly way, her movements fluid and precise, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated in my chest. When she was close, I could feel the heat of her, smell something like cinnamon and burning cedar, and despite everything, despite the fear and anger and desperation, some part of me responded to that proximity with something other than terror. She knew it too. I could see it in her eyes, the way she sometimes let her hand linger on my shoulder, the way she leaned close when explaining a particularly complex concept. She was playing with me, testing me, and I hated that it worked. On the 5th day, she brought me out of my cell for the first time. Guards escorted us through the palace, and I saw more of Ashkarthal than I had during my initial arrival. The city was staggering in scope, levels upon levels built into and around the volcano, with bridges and platforms connecting structures that defied gravity. Everywhere I looked, I saw evidence of a thriving society. Markets where dragon women traded goods, training grounds where young warriors practiced aerial combat, temples where priestesses tended eternal flame. We climbed to a high balcony overlooking the entire city, and Kalith stood at the railing, wings spread slightly to catch the updrafts of hot air rising from below. "Beautiful, is it not?" she said. I had to admit it was. Terrifying, but beautiful. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked. "Because you should understand what you fuel," she said. "The trial of fire is not merely personal ambition. If I succeed, I become heir apparent, and when my mother passes, I will rule this city, this caste. I will be responsible for millions of lives, dragon and human alike. The power required for such a role must be earned through sacrifice, both my own and that of another. You are not dying for nothing, human. You are dying so that I may lead, so that Ashkarthal endures. Does that actually make you feel better?" I asked. "About killing me?" She turned to look at me, and for a moment I thought I saw something flicker in those molten eyes, something that might have been doubt or regret, but it passed quickly. "No," she said quietly, "it does not, but it must be done regardless." We stood there in silence for a while, watching the city go about its business below, and I felt the weight of inevitability settling over me like a shroud. That night, alone in my cell, I broke down. I wept for the first time since the capture, great racking sobs that shook my whole body. I wept for my lost life, for the home I would never see again, for the sheer unfairness of being torn from everything I knew and thrown into this nightmare. When I finally exhausted myself, I lay on the pallet and stared at the ceiling, and I made a decision. If I was going to die, I would die on my terms. I would learn everything I could, understand everything they would teach me, and when the moment came, I would find a way to refuse them. To deny Kalith her trial, to throw their tradition back in their faces, It was a small rebellion, probably meaningless, but it was all I had. The next 3 days passed in a blur of intensive instruction. The priestesses taught me about the trial of fire itself, the ritual component, the historical precedents. I learned that the trial took place in the Chamber of Becoming, the same room where I'd first been brought before Calith. The sacrifice would be bound over the pool of liquid fire, and through a complex series of invocations and blood rituals, their life force would be drawn out and channeled into the princess attempting the trial. If the princess could withstand the power, could master it and bind it to her will, she would emerge transformed, stronger, with abilities beyond normal dragon women. If she failed, the power would consume her, and both she and the sacrifice would burn to ash. No one had ever survived as a sacrifice, not once in 10,000 years. They told me this without emotion, as simple fact, and I absorbed it with the same numb acceptance I'd absorbed everything else. On the 8th day, Calith came alone again, but this time she looked different, tired, vulnerable somehow, though that might have been wishful thinking on my part. She sat down on the floor of my cell, wings folded tight against her back, and for a long moment she said nothing. "Are you afraid?" she asked finally. "Yes," I said. There was no point in lying. "Are you?" She smiled, but it wasn't the predatory smile I'd come to expect. This one was smaller, more genuine. "Terrified," she admitted. "Every princess who has undergone the trial of fire has been terrified. 3 of my older sisters attempted it. 2 died. The 3rd survived, but was so damaged she could no longer fly. She lives in the deep vaults now, tended by servant, her mind broken. My mother says fear is proof of wisdom." "Your mother sounds pleasant," I said. Calith actually laughed, a short bark of genuine amusement. "She is many things. Pleasant is not among them. But she is powerful, and she has ruled well. If I am to follow her, I must prove myself worthy. By killing me." "Yes." We sat in silence again, and I felt the weight of it, the impossible situation we were both trapped in by tradition and expectation. "What if you just didn't do it?" I asked. "What if you said no?" "I would be cast out," Calith said, "stripped of title and rank, exiled from the city. I would become clanless, which is worse than death for our kind. And another princess would rise to take my place, another sister or cousin, and they would undergo their own trial of fire with their own sacrifice. Your death would change nothing except to make it meaningless." "It's meaningless anyway," I said bitterly. "Not to me," she said, and there was something in her voice that made me look at her. She met my gaze steadily. "I have chosen you, human. I have claimed your life as my trial. That creates a bond between us, one that will persist even after you are gone. You will be part of me, literally. Your strength will become my strength, your will part of my will. It is the most intimate connection my kind can forge with another being, and I will carry you with me, always, in the fire that burns at my core." "That's not comfort," I said. "I know," she replied, "but it is truth." She stood, preparing to leave, and I found myself speaking before I could stop myself. "What's your favorite thing?" I asked. "About this city, this world, anything. What do you love?" She paused, considering. "There is a place," she said finally, "high in the mountain peaks above the city, where the air is thin and cold, and the stars burn so bright you can see the colors within them. I go there sometimes, alone, and I fly through that impossible brightness. And for those moments, I am not a princess, or an heir, or a future queen. I am simply myself, simply Calith, moving through beauty. That is what I love. I'd like to see that," I said quietly. She looked at me for a long moment, and something passed between us, some shared acknowledgement of tragedy and waste. "Perhaps you will," she said, "in the fire. They say the dying see vision, beautiful and terrible. Perhaps you will see the stars." She left, and I was alone again with my thoughts and my fear and the 2 days remaining of my life. On the 9th day, they took me to the ritual bath, chambers carved from white marble and filled with water heated by volcanic spring. Priestesses scrubbed me until my skin was raw, then anointed me with oils that smelled of myrrh and ash. They dressed in simple white robe, the clothing of a sacrifice, and they painted symbols on my arms and chest in some kind of luminous ink that glowed faintly in the dimness. Through it all, I remained passive, letting them do what they would, conserving my energy for the rebellion I planned. That night, Kalith came one last time, and this time she brought food and wine. A final meal, she said, was traditional. We ate together in my cell, sitting across from each other on the floor, and we talked, not about the trial or death or duty, but about small things, meaningless things. She told me about her childhood, about learning to fly, about the games royal children played among the volcanic peaks. I told her about my life before, about cities and technology, about a world where humans ruled and dragons were myths. She listened with genuine interest, asking questions, and for a few hours we were simply two people talking, the circumstances of our meeting forgotten. When the food was gone and the wine nearly empty, she looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. "I wish we had met differently," she said. "I wish that too," I replied, and meant it. She reached across the space between us and took my hand. Her skin was hot, almost burning, but I didn't pull away. We sat like that for a while, connected, and I felt something pass between us again, that same acknowledgement of tragedy, but also something else, something neither of us could name. "I will make it quick," she said. "I will take no more than necessary. This, I promise you." "That's something," I said. She squeezed my hand once, then released it and stood. "The trial begins at dawn. They will come for you when the sun touches the peak of the throne room dome. Be ready." "I'll be ready," I said, though I wasn't sure what I was ready for. She left without another word, and I spent my final night staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything and nothing, about stars I would never see, and a home I would never return to, about white scales catching light and molten eyes that held equal parts fire and sorrow. When the guards came at dawn, I walked with them willingly, head high, playing my part. They led me through corridors I now recognized, past dragon women who watched with interest or indifference, up the long spiral to the Chamber of Becoming. The room was packed, hundreds of dragon women arranged in those concentric circles, all eyes forward. At the center, the pool of liquid fire blazed brighter than before, and suspended over it was a framework of metal and bone, a harness where I would be bound. Kalith stood on her platform in full ceremonial armor, scales polished until they blazed like captured lightning, crown gleaming, wings spread wide. She looked every inch the princess, the future queen, magnificent and terrible and beautiful. When she saw me, her expression didn't change, but I saw her wings twitch slightly. A tell I'd learned meant agitation. The priestesses came forward and began binding me into the harness, straps around my wrists and ankles, around my chest and waist, until I hung suspended over the fire, held in place by tension and magic. The heat from below was intense, and sweat poured from me within moments, but I focused on Kalith, on the plan I'd formed, on the choice I would make. The ritual began with chanting, all the assembled dragon women speaking in unison, words of power that made the air vibrate. Priestesses moved around the pool, drawing symbols in the air with trails of fire, building complex geometric patterns that hung glowing in the darkness. Kalith remained on her platform, arms raised, wings spread, a living avatar of power awaiting transformation. Then came my part. A priestess approached with a ceremonial blade, ornate and cruel, and she cut my palm, letting blood drip into the pool below. The liquid fire accepted it, flaring brighter, hungry. Kalith's voice rang out, speaking the words of claiming, of binding, of consumption, and I felt something grab hold of me, something that reached into my chest and wrapped around whatever vital thing kept me alive. This was the moment. This was where I would refuse, would deny her, would break the ritual, and damn us both. I opened my mouth to speak the refusal, to say the word that would end it all. And I looked at Kalith, saw her standing there, saw the fear and determination and hope in her eyes, saw the weight of expectation crushing down on her, saw the future of millions of lives resting on this moment. I saw her, truly saw her, and I understood something I hadn't before. She was a prisoner too, trapped by tradition and duty and the expectations of her kind, forced into this role, into this ritual, with no more real choice than I had. We were both victims here, both sacrifices to something larger and older than either of us. And in that moment of understanding, I made a different choice. Instead of refusal, I spoke words of acceptance. Instead of denying her, I gave myself willingly. The ritual had taught me the phrases, and I spoke them now, clear and strong, surrendering not to her, but with her, acknowledging the bond between us, the connection forged in these terrible days. Calith's eyes widened in shock, then filled with something that might have been gratitude or might have been anguish. The ritual accelerated, power pouring out of me in waves, flowing through the harness and into the pool, rising from the liquid fire in a column of flame that engulfed Calith where she stood. She screamed, and the sound tore through me, but she didn't fall, didn't burn. Instead, she blazed brighter, scales shifting from white to platinum to something beyond color, wings spreading wider, growing larger, power incarnate. I felt myself fading, felt my life flowing out, but I also felt something else, felt myself becoming part of her, part of that fire, part of that transformation. The boundaries between us blurred, and for a moment I wasn't sure where I ended, and she began. I saw through her eyes, felt her fear and triumph, understood the weight of power settling onto her like a mantle. I saw the future too, visions fragmentary and strange, Calith on the burning throne, older and scarred, ruling with wisdom earned through sacrifice. I saw wars and peace, saw humans treated less like cattle and more like people, saw change slow and painful, but real. I saw my influence in her, my humanity tempering her fire, making her something new. Then the visions faded, and I was falling, the harness releasing, gravity taking hold. I tumbled toward the liquid fire, toward oblivion, and in my last moment of consciousness, I felt Calith's grief like a blade through my heart. But I didn't die. I felt myself pulled aside at the last instant, hands grabbing me, dragging me away from the fire. I collapsed on cool stone, gasping, and through blurred vision, I saw Calith descending from her platform, the ritual complete, power radiating from her in waves that made the air shimmer. She knelt beside me, placed one burning hand on my chest, and spoke a single word. Life flooded back into me, not all of it, not enough to restore what I'd lost, but enough. Enough to breathe, to see, to understand. The chamber erupted in chaos, dragon women shouting in confusion or approval or outrage, but Calith ignored them all. She looked down at me with eyes that now held galaxies, power beyond comprehension, and she smiled that terrible, beautiful smile. "You chose," she said, voice resonant with harmonics that weren't there before. "You surrendered willingly, and so the ritual was stronger than any in memory. You have given me power enough to change worlds, human. And because you chose, because you gave rather than being taken, I choose too. I choose that you live. I choose that you remain, not as sacrifice, not as servant, but as something else, something new, my conscience, my reminder of humanity, my bond-sworn companion until the fire finally claims us both." "I don't understand," I whispered, barely able to form words. "You will," she said. "We have time now, time to learn, to grow, to see what happens when mercy meets power, when tradition bends to will. You wanted me to choose differently. This is me, choosing. Are you strong enough to bear it?" Around us, the chaos was settling. Dragon women realizing something unprecedented had occurred. The priestesses conferring urgently, trying to determine if the ritual was valid, if tradition had been upheld or broken. The queen would have to decide, Calith said, and that decision would determine both our fates. But for now, in this moment, I was alive. Against all odds, against every precedent, I had survived. I looked up at Calith, at the princess, who was now something more than princess, who had taken my life and given it back transformed, and I saw our futures tangled together in ways neither of us could predict. I saw danger ahead, political intrigue and assassination attempts, saw rivals who would use my survival as proof of weakness, saw humans who would hate me for my complicity, and dragon women who would never accept me as equal. But I also saw possibility, saw change, saw the chance to matter in ways that transcended simple survival. "I'm strong enough," I told her, and she helped me to my feet. Together we turned to face the assembled masses, to face the judgment that would come, to face whatever future awaited us in this impossible world. The trial was over, mine had ended, and Calith's had truly just begun. But we would face it together, bound by fire and choice, and a connection that defied every law of her people. I didn't know if that would be enough, but standing there, my hand in hers, both of us transformed by what we'd shared, I thought maybe it could be. The sun rose beyond the dome, casting red light through volcanic glass, and Ashkarthal awakened to a new day that held either our salvation or our destruction. The choice, as always, would be ours to make.